Hey everyone, this is Louis7, and today I have some exciting news for the Lord of the Rings Online, and that is that the beta for update 28.2 has a huge update to monster players, and thus player versus monster player, or PvMP, LOTRO's version of PvP. But anyway, this update is in open beta and playable right now on the Bull Roar server and client, and it will close in a couple days on November 12th, and I think the goal of this beta is to get feedback on the PvMP updates, and I must say, I personally don't play PvMP, or at least haven't for a very long time, and when I did, I only did it like very barely. But I have seen and heard from a lot of PvMP players, so I have at least some secondhand knowledge to share with you all throughout the patch notes breakdown. But before that, I gotta mention there are a few other notable changes in this update that I will be covering, but this is primarily a PvMP update in the beta at least. Also of note, there was a preview for update 28.2 and the update 28.1.1 patch notes, and that was on a new quest that had copper coins of Gundabad for Embers of Enchantment, but that is notably not in this. Perhaps they will add it in a later beta round, or at least by the time the full update is released. I actually have some news for y'all regarding the next live update for the Lord of the Rings Online with update 28.1.2. I am just finding this out after I already recorded the whole 28.2 beta video, so I'm just going to fit these notes in real quick before we get into that because it's a very minor update, but I did want to let y'all know about it. This update will be released on Thursday, November 12th. I think the usual maintenance 8 a.m. to like 12 p.m. server time would be my guess, but moving on, the actual notes for this update will be a fix to an issue where loot would have incorrect item levels depending on the loot rules with the fellowship. If it had like rolling or the fellowship leader loot assignment, whatever that was, there were some issues with incorrect item levels. And then moving on, there were some updates to quests and adventure areas. So one, canceling missions used to actually apply the daily reset timer, so if you canceled a mission you were just kind of stuck with that, but now it will actually work properly. You can pick up the mission after canceling it, and also when running missions in a fellowship, aka running them duo, you can actually join the encounter started by a fellow without having to have like all the quests at the NPC like you used to do. And it will be available under the available private encounters in the NPC dialogue like other fellowship quests like that. And then also there was an update to instance the Shakalash to the Stair Battle. The duo reward chest will now spawn correctly, and also some updates to the Bloody Threshold. So this is actually stuff that I covered in the update 28.2 beta, but now it looks like it's in the update 28.1.2 release notes as well, so that's a little bit weird. But the final thing here real quick is the miscellaneous change with the Beornings, and they were no longer tilt when walking on angled surfaces. Now I actually play my Beorning pretty frequently and I never noticed this issue, so I'm kind of curious what it was, but as long as they are correctly perpendicular to the ground and they can walk normal on angled surfaces, that is probably a good thing. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back into the regular update 28.2 beta. So the first thing in the beta notes actually highlights that this is a monster player balance change update, and the beta is serving as an early look at that. So monster players are being adjusted, and it looks like the first thing they have is they're changing how monster player stats are wired up behind the scenes, so it makes them more consistent with your free players, and it also allows them to give the creeps, which are the monster players, more incremental rating bumps to keep their pace with players in the player itemization over the course of like a full level cap cycle like we recently had, where basically creeps were way underpowered compared to freeps, at least as I've heard it. And on top of that, it looks like creeps also will get a generic multiplier to base health and damage to keep pace once again with player itemization, and they say this multiplier can be quickly updated to let them bump creeps up whenever new content is released with higher item level itemization for freeps. And just so everybody knows, creeps are the monster players as I mentioned, but freeps are the free people, so your regular players, or regular characters rather. But moving on with the notes, it looks like there have been a lot of tweakings to specific creep base rating values as well as trait and skill rating values. Again, I think this is to bring them in line with the power level of freeps. And it sounds like they will also start with significantly better ratings with their stats, and that is true even before they add corruptions. And the next thing they actually have are corruption updates to both physical and tactical mitigation corruptions. So the physical mitigation corruptions will now also give, in addition to the mitigation, will give block, parry, and evade or BPE boost, and then the tactical mitigation corruptions will also give you some resistance. And then they do note that resistance corruptions still do exist, but they will probably be replaced or altered when they have a chance to expand the corruption trait and do like a more deliberate pass on corruptions. So it sounds like that is something they may update later. Moving on, there are some more updates to the morale and power regen sources, including with monster player skills and traits, and kind of many consumables for both Freeps and Creeps, probably with the goal to have better balance around regenerating morale and power. And then for the final few updates, the first thing they have is they finished a major normalization pass on damage and healing. So this kind of goes along with what we've been seeing throughout these notes, that Creeps in general will just be more in line with the power that they should be and relative to Freeps. And then they also bumped a lot of their weaker damage skills, and this is actually something I have seen people complain about, is some of the Creep skills are just kind of useless and don't scale that well, and that's actually something you see with Freeps. There are kind of an annoying amount of skills, if I'm going to be honest, that don't really scale well or just have weird scaling as you get better gear or higher level with your character and things like that. So this is going to be good for that consistency, that a lot of the weaker skills may actually be useful and just not totally useless like I have heard at least they used to be. And moving on from that, they also made a number of AoEs for the Creeps not depend on a fellowship, which to me sounds weird, but again, not having the personal experience playing in PvMP where I even remember that being a thing, I cannot comment too much on that. Moving on, I did mention we have some updates other than just the monster player updates we just went over, and the next one is with the instances. So the new Shokalash Stair Battle, the new 6-man, you can actually run that solo and duo, and the update is actually for the duo reward chest that will spawn correctly so you can get loot in that. And then the Bloody Threshold has been updated, a couple bug fixes with the encounters. Specifically, it looks like the final boss fight. And then the next thing we have are updates to quests and adventure areas. And the first thing here is actually tradable Unbound Reputation granting tokens now have appropriate region quests gating their usage. Now, to me, this note sounds very concerning because I don't know how this actually works in the... To me, that sounds like the regular reputation items will actually have you make you go through the quests in whatever region. I don't know which quest, the first quest you go to in a region, or maybe one of the final quests you can finally use the reputation items. And to me, that's very concerning, especially for somebody who might play alts and just give the reputation items to them, especially if you didn't quest in a certain zone or whatever, that you have to do appropriate region quests. And I also don't know which regions, which reputation items these apply to, so that'll be interesting to see, but it is very concerning to me, so spend a little bit of time on that. And then the next updates are actually a lot of bug fixes, kind of the usual stuff they have with quests, just making things work more consistently, or again, the bug fixes. But after all those that I won't go specifically through, they do note that the Harvest Math Festival has been extended through the end of November, it looks like through November 30th of this year. So the Fall Festival will last a little bit longer, and I think it was delayed when it started, so that definitely makes sense. And I also know a lot of people have been enjoying it and trying to get the cosmetics. But moving on, we are getting near the end of the patch notes with the miscellaneous changes. And the first one here is the boar mounted jump animation is smoother for all races. Even though I have actually used boar mounts, I was not familiar with there being any extra unsmoothness compared to other mounts where everything in LOTRO seems not that smooth when jumping on a mount. But anyway, it sounds like those animations have been fixed for all races. And then also all mount types can be used in Thorin's Hall, it looks like. And of note, you could actually use mounts in Thorin's Hall Inn, which seems like a bug, but perhaps with this change that is actually somewhat intentional, that you can use your mounts in Thorin's Hall as an intention, and maybe that does include the Thorin's Hall Inn. And then the final change we have is to loot boxes, and this one I, as usual, am not going to be too much of a fan of. So Adventurer's Gear, which is the level 130 loot box, that will create items at level 428 with a chance to create them up to item level 430. I think in the update 28 it was changed that they could be item level 426 with a chance to go to 428. And to me, this sounds like they weren't having enough sales on loot boxes and not enough people are buying these, so they had to make them stronger is what it sounds like. I'm not 100% sure that's the case, but that's just what it makes me think of. Anyway, we can get off of that. And that actually brings us to the summary, because that's all the patch notes I have for y'all regarding the Update 28 beta in the Lord of the Rings Online. So to do the summary, we had many changes to creeps for the player versus monster player experience. Then we had a few quality of life adjustments and the usual bug fixes. Then we did see the Harvest Math was extended to the end of November, and finally an update to loot box year for the notable stuff. So I hope the patch note overview on the Update 28 public beta preview in LOTRO was helpful for y'all. while. Because again, I am not much of a PvMP player, I don't have too much to actually test with this, actually like streaming the beta, but I will say this actually makes me somewhat excited to maybe check out playing a creep when the full update 28.2 comes out in the future. So let me know in the comments if you actually would be interested in seeing that. Anyway, again, I hope you all enjoyed this and learned something useful from it, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing for more or becoming a channel member to support the content, and thanks for watching everyone.